to that, obviously this is a semi-autobiographical film, but how did you make the decisions? And no, I don't want to get too personal, but I do want to get a little bit personal. How did you make the decisions what to include, what not to, and what to fictionalize and what to literally lift from real life?
Well, I think I knew that there would always be a second part to it, and you're looking at the second part to it every time each of these actors came to the lines and the scenes. They were able to add something that was different. So I knew there would be something that became its own thing because of their talent. I suppose I tried to include everything that I thought might have some connection to other families, other characters. What Jamie was saying about the difficulty of making big decisions in families that to the world outside and maybe seem quite small, but they're titanic in their consequences inside a family. So I tried to do that, which I thought maybe people would recognize, and that were also quite specific, and so it was a sort of suck it and see thing. In the end, I let my brother and my sister, who were the first people to read the script, sort of decide whether I'd gone too far. And in fact, I remember my brother saying, "Oh no, you should put the other thing in." "Oh Christ, no, it was much worse than that when he said the thing about the thing." I said, "Oh no, I think we'll find a way to draw a line." So it was an intuitive thing that was based on thinking, how might this be recognized by other people? How might it draw out, their recognition?
Yeah, Jamie, Katrina talked about looking at news footage and what have you from the time. What did you do to research the role for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky now at whatever generation this is of actors that we have so much access to footage and news footage, and YouTube is your best friend when you're doing research for any role. I've a little bit of inbuilt luckiness that I'm from Belfast. My dad's from Belfast, his dad's from Belfast. I've never met a man from my family who's not from Belfast. So just that very nature of men from that part of the world is within me. There's a great series that had been put out probably about 6 months, I think, before we started shooting, called Pop Goes Northern Ireland. And Ken had sent me a couple of them, the specific ones. And basically it was going through every year over like a pretty much, I think there was 25 of them or something. So it wasn't every year of the Troubles, but it was marking specific years and then showing like a half an hour, I think they were like half an hour sort of vignettes, weren't they, Ken?
Yeah.
With music from that year and then the headlines, what was happening in the country at that time. And they were an amazing sort of dose of what was happening at the time, what the general feeling was of the people at the time. Sometimes, even in the middle of the conflict, there was years that seemed quite hopeful, and then everything fell apart again. But it gave you a great sense into the mindset of people around that time and where their head was at dealing with everything that was going on around them. So they were very useful. I've got Ken to ask any questions. That's rare that you're getting to. Yeah, of course, I'm playing a depiction of his father, but it's not, note for note, and Ken never wanted it to be. But I still have the access to Ken's mind to ask him any questions I would have wanted about his own father. So a collection of all of those things has made it a more accessible portrayal than maybe some other jobs.
One of the things about the film, and Kieran, you mentioned this to some degree, and I wanted to pick up on it, is the amazing production design by Jim Clay, which, again, as I said earlier, I felt sometimes when we were in some of those scenes, I was sitting in my nan's front room. It felt so real to life. For you as actors, how important is that? And this is for all the actors, including you, Jude. For you as actors, how important is that, the literal setting of the stage for finding the characters? And Katrina, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
I mean, it's so important. I think anytime you can go into a set and very quickly assess everything and start to feel at home in it, and I think this was so great as well. We had these sort of early days of our tests that Ken was giving us, which just had us sort of walking in the environment. And, there's a great scene where we're all making sandwiches for people coming, and it was just such a, you instantly felt at home in this kitchen. Everything was where you would expect it to be, and there's something like with that, it just gives you this freedom when you're moving about the space, and it just feels like anytime you're going to go pick something up, it's intuitively where you would put it yourself. And it gives you a freedom to sort of let that part of your imagination rest, that you don't have to do the heavy lifting in that sense, and you can sort of focus up more on the sort of emotional content of a scene.
Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, because I didn't get out much, as you know, due to my aging and ailing, and inside the construction of that beautiful terraced house, although I guess it was based on Ken's memories of and Jim Clay's construction of that little place, it was just like my Auntie Molly's. In a different area of Belfast. It was almost exactly the same to the T, with those little backyards where people would work with handcraft stuff and just pick any old kind of scrap and kind of work it to make a few bob from it. The tiny little kitchen, and then the seating areas, the little sofa. I mean, that would have been the center of the house. That would have been the comfy place. And then there would be probably just one other seat, and a little maybe television in the corner or not, if you could afford one. But it is set, and also the lighting, of the whole sense of the palette of the design, just because I remember those times, because I was kind of living through them in the 50s and into the 60s, and they were beautifully constructed, and they were a great aid for an actor, without a doubt.
Jamie, for you?
Yeah, like, it's such a team effort, making movies, making television, and every department has such a role to play in everything feeling authentic. It's all we're trying to do. And from Charlotte, our wardrobe designer, to whacking our hair and makeup, to Jim Clay, it's just that their sort of attention to detail, just providing us with a level of authenticity that is like second to none, and it just truly lifts you, and you just instantly feel at home and comfortable with the environment that hopefully matches where you're trying to aim your performance at. So I have to say, every time on set you felt like some of the work was done for you by just the environment and how authentic it was. It was incredible.
Jude, you do an incredible job here, and so much of the weight of this film is on your shoulders. I wanted to ask you, what now, looking back, what was the best piece of advice or direction that Ken gave you during the making of the film?
Well,
or not?
I mean, every single cast member gave me their own advice, and that really helped through filming, whether it was how to
I think that's a whole panel unto itself that we all want to hear.
Yeah, and it was probably, he told me, like, I think it was the first scene, that put a lot of myself into the character, and not play a direct version, and sort of mix it all up, and that made me feel very relaxed. And yeah, I wouldn't have been able to play Buddy to that extent without him.
So Jude, now this being your first film, what's your take? How was it? Fun?
It was a dream come true, working with all these amazing people that are now my best friends at this point. And every single call, every time I meet them, I just get so excited and adrenaline's pumping.
Oh, and I have to ask you, there's a few things. There's a lot of Easter eggs from some of your past work in this film, but everybody asks this question, so I'm going to. Why did you decide to make it in black and white?
I followed my instinct. My instinct was that I should tell this story in the way that I watched films back then mostly, which was at home as the sort of, child-minding device, the black and white television in the corner. And that's where I was introduced to great movies of the past, where I would see these big granite constructions in a place called Monument Valley, directed by people called John Ford. And when I walked outside, in Ireland, when I was growing up, it rained a lot, and it felt like the monotone of the great sort of structures that I was seeing in westerns was mirrored by, the cranes in the shipyard in Belfast and some of the 19th century architecture of the big town, the big city that made the Titanic. There was something about black and white that was to me Belfast. I didn't question my instinct too much, and I also knew that it had a kind of poetic feeling that made you feel at one and the same time that it was a sort of authentic sense of period, grittier in its way, but it also allowed in the film to see what the cinema itself, when we visited it, did to me, and that was to blow my mind with color that was completely all-embracing. I'd never seen anything like it. When I don't know what it would be like for a modern, youngster, but my equivalent of kind of Jurassic Park, or I don't know, a Marvel movie now, was going to see A Million Years BC, and Ray Harryhausen stop-motion dinosaurs, put the fear of God in me. It was amazing. It was so exciting.
And you have the unique habit of getting a Raquel Welch cameo in 2021.
Well, which is a thrill. We've managed. I think we can, all the actors here can say, I've acted with John Wayne, Raquel Welch, Van Dyke, Lee Marvin, James Stewart. I think, put that on the CV, guys.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Katrina, there's been such an amazing response to this film, and I listed off in the introduction some of the nominations and acclaim that you guys have received. What has the experience been like for you going through this? Because this has been jet fueled.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think for all of us, this film came at such a special moment. We'd all been in lockdown for 4 or 5 months or something like that. So the film itself, getting to make this, was such a special experience. And I think, as Jude said, we have all really bonded, and we have all really become a very sort of close-knit group. And I think for us to be able to have taken this out to the world, and for it to resonate with people and sort of land the way it has and have the reaction it has, it just feels, it just feels so special on top of what was already so beautiful. And I think we all feel incredibly indebted to Ken for bringing us on this great journey. And I don't know, it's been really special.
I have to ask as my final question. Whenever I talk to anybody about the film, always is mentioned Jamie singing and Katrina's dancing. And let's just say, one of the most perfect rock videos never shown on MTV, to put it mildly. So Jamie, Katrina, tell us about the filming of that scene, because it is remarkable, and if anything, as it's intended to, it epitomizes the love and the chemistry between the two of you and the characters. So Jamie, what's with the voice?
Yeah, well, listen, there's a nice thing that happened where when we shot that scene, I just had to lip sync to the original, and then I recorded a vocal down the line. So it's one less thing to think about, of like singing in tune, when I had a million other things to think about. And I think the thing is with that scene in that moment, yes, you want the song to sound good. Yes, you want the movement of it to look good, the choreography, but essentially there's so much going on in the story at that point. It's a massive release after the death of Pop. That has sort of come to the time where I think the audience feel like they need that release, but also what's happening between Ma and Pa at that point, where their relationship is fractured to a point that looks almost, untenable. And they share this moment of, we're going through the ringer here. It's been very hard. There's hard decisions ahead of us still, but I love you. We're fine. I've got your back, and I love you. And having to portray that, for me personally, felt like the most important aspect of shooting the scene. So that is at its core. But then you also are thinking about, is my left foot? Is it my left foot? I dragged the right foot back, or where, so it's a terrifying bit in many respects, but I was just getting so much back from Katrina, and I think we both were very aware that the most important thing to convey was where these guys are at in their relationship, and luckily we matched each other in that, and she was amazing that day.
Wow, come on. It's such a romantic scene, and Jamie has just got oodles and oodles of charisma that was just flying out. But I think we also have to give a bit of a props to Una Niganila for putting beautifully around our left foot out, but I don't know, getting a chance to film something as romantic as that is really special, and I think it's, as Jamie said, it was so needed at that point in the script, and it just felt really beautiful to film. And we had all of our sort of cast, bar Kieran, in one room at that time, and it was a real celebratory moment, I think, for all of us, because we hadn't had everyone together as well, which was really beautiful.
Thank you guys so much. Ken, I have to ask you, and it's sort of based off what Katrina just said, what has surprised you in the reaction to the film since it came out?
What surprised me and moved me is just the sort of generosity of the reaction, and the way in which that seems to come from a very personal place in other people. People say to me it's a very personal film. It is. There's absolutely no question. But what's really thrilling is that for a lot of people, watching it is a very, very personal experience that expands way beyond what we set out to do, and deeply, it seems, for those 97 minutes into their own lives. And when they share that, it's a very beautiful thing, humbling thing, and we're super happy and grateful to have helped, spark that in some people.
Well, it's a very beautiful film. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, the director and the cast of Belfast. I'm Dominic Patton from Deadline Hollywood. Please join us again for more of our screening series. And until then, take care.